I'm Mo Rocca, and I'm excited to announce Season 4 of my podcast, Mobituaries. I've got a whole new bunch of stories to share with you about the most fascinating people and things who are no longer with us. From famous figures who died on the very same day, to the things I wish would die, like buffets. All that and much more. Listen to Mobituaries with Mo Rocca wherever you get your podcasts.
Brooks Running has a new shoe for you runners out there. Did you hear that? Better turn up your volume. In fact, turn it up to the max. Introducing the all-new Ghost Max. It's got all kinds of things to make your knees and ankles feel protected, like Max Cushion, Max Soft Landings with DNA Loft V2 foam, and Max Smooth Rides with their Glide Roll Rocker. Feel better on your run with Ghost Max. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
This is Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. I am so happy to introduce you to Elisha Joyce, who is new Realty Central Texas and the incoming executive director of CareNet.
Yes, ma'am.
What tall stilettos you have to fill with Deborah McGregor Caperton.
I know.
Retiring. She and I go back a long way, and we're just so happy to let this be your introduction.
Thank
officially.
You. No kidding. This is really the official kind of coming out in Waco all around. We got here in August, so we're fairly fresh if you think about it. We moved from Oregon, and I like to tell people after I say that, but we are refugees to Texas. We found our people in Texas. So
I've heard that before.
Yes.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. You just have such an interesting story to tell. I'd like to get started, though, but I want to focus first on CareNet, and then we'll talk about Food Fighters on NBC, which is a whole other...
another life.
A whole other wonderful thing with Elisha. But I have heard, and I want you to tell the story, why your passion is in saving the lives of unborn.
You know, it's interesting because... I had a friend, the way that I found CareNet, let me backtrack just a little bit, because when we moved to Texas and landed in Waco, I hadn't even heard of CareNet yet. And we had a friend over and we were having this great conversation. Her husband was washing dishes and she was standing across the counter and she's like, "Tell me about you." And I said, "Oh, I went to law school and I've been doing this creative work and I've run a business the last few years." And then we came to Waco and she was like, "Well, what do you think of abortion?" Like just flat out.
Out of the blue?
Out of the blue. And I kind of chuckled and I said, "Kathy, I'm from Oregon." I said, "We don't even speak words like that." Like it was, where I come from, it's always been it's such a hot topic. People usually don't talk about it.
Right, just steer
But
clear.
I said, now I get to tell you my story. And so that's how it opened up conversation. And I got to tell her that my mom was almost 6 months pregnant and was in a relationship with my dad. She had come out of a very sheltered family, and my dad was in bodybuilding and entertainment. And so he had the big afro and he had the purple boots and he was just this big bodybuilder man, and she was head over heels. But he didn't want to have a baby. And so she had waited and waited. And by 5.5 months, she was like, "I don't think I can do this because he's not sticking to me. And this isn't a relationship he obviously wants to be in." So she went to Planned Parenthood. And back in the day, there was, I guess, a 12-hour waiting period. So they took her in the night before. And long story short, on the other side of town, while my mom's laying in Planned Parenthood, because my dad had dropped her off even, was like, "I'll pick you up in the morning."
So he knew she was planning to abort you.
Yep, he knew. And he dropped her off and was going to go out partying with a buddy and pick her up in the morning. And so on the other side of town, my dad's driving away and his buddy's like, "Where's Kathy at tonight?" And he says, "Oh, I dropped her off at Planned Parenthood. She's getting an abortion," just like that. And his friend, how we know, I've to this day, I wish I could find Mike, because his name was Mike. And he said to my dad, "Do you know what they do?" And they started talking, two men on their way to the bar, going out to party, start talking about what it looks like. And my dad's testimony now, because now he's 78 and he has this tremendous testimony of coming to find the Lord, but he will say that in that moment, it was the first time he ever felt God audibly speak and say, "Who are you to take this life?" And they turned the car around and they went back to Planned Parenthood and knocked on the door. And the nurse is like, "Yes." And my dad says, I'm here to get Kathy. I don't want her to do this. And so they let him in, and he found my mom, and my mom starts bawling her eyes out because she had been praying. She had known the Lord. She had been saved by Campus Crusade for Christ. Mm-hmm. And so she had been laying in that bed, and she's like, God, I don't know how you're going to do it, but if you want to save this life, you can do it. Sorry, it makes me emotional.
It's making me emotional.
So my dad came in, and Mike was there. These two burly guys walk in, and my mom's on the table, and my dad's like, can we do this? Let's have this baby. And so the nurse came in, and they could hear my heartbeat. So my whole life, like, even though there's no fairy tale ending, like, there was a lot of trauma in my life. My dad was actually very abusive, and we were poor, like, you name it, it's probably touched my life. But even through all of that, it was like God just stood in the gap, because my parents, both of them individually, never let me forget, like, you were saved. Like, something in your life, you were saved. God saved you. And so even though I'm the first one, like, no one was educated in my family. No one ever went to college. So my whole life, there was just this hand where my dad would say, you need better. You need to choose better. You need to go to this school. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting here and I'm telling my friend Kathy this story, and she's like, well, you need to know CareNet because they're looking for an executive director. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not looking for a job. Like, I have an agency. I'm doing my thing.
You have an amazing career.
But I had, and I came here to continue. But as the conversation was shared, Kathy shared it with a friend, and a friend shared it with a friend, and then Glenda, and the conversation started happening. And as I prayerfully just kind of looked at what was going on and what CareNet was about, and the fact that I met with some board members, and they were like, here's what we're doing, and here's who we are. My dad really was speaking life into that. And he was like, you know how you've been praying for purpose? He's like, this is it. He says, all your years, think about everything you've ever done. He says, could it be that you're in Waco for this job? And so my life personally touches saving unborn lives, because I am one of those lives, right?
Yes.
Like, I am a life that was saved. And so I see the importance, not just of saving the life though, but also of nurturing the lives once they're born, like, because I am one of the lives that was nurtured by God standing in the gap and providing people all along the way that really helped. And so the more I learned about CareNet, I'm like, okay, Lord, if this is what I'm meant to do, I'm all in, because it's precious. What we do is so precious, because it's not just about saving the life. It's really a pro-abundant life ministry to see women not just birth their babies, but then support them through that.
Right, because as you say, there's more. I mean, there's preparing that young lady for what's ahead with having a baby. But what a gripping story! What an impactful story. And we all know that every day is a gift. Yes, but your life is a gift, and I thank you so much for sharing that. And really, the work that CareNet has done, I guess you can't even put a pencil or come to a number of how many lives have been saved.
I know. And it's pretty amazing, because even in post-Roe world, like, as I've settled in and just kind of learned and watched the clients that are coming through, we are still facing issues, because chemical abortion is very real and it's very traumatic. Yeah. And so we're starting, post-abortive care is going to become a much bigger issue. And babies are coming. Like, the babies are coming. Like, before the decision that came down from the Supreme Court, it was really a battle of how do we help women understand and ideally choose, make a life-affirming choice. Now, in this world in Texas, it's when the babies are coming, what are we doing? So you still have the fight, but then now you have the support that's even going to be of utmost importance. Yeah.
The pro-choice crowd, it is the easy answer. Take care of the problem. So having that support, and I think a lot of people may not understand that that's such a big part of what CareNet does. And you mentioned post-abortive care, the emotional toll that takes place with a woman who's chosen abortion.
Absolutely. And also just kind of thinking about, how we offer that compassionate place for people to land. And, we really are of the position that we are there to empower women. Like, that's the thing, is if you go another direction, or the narrative is, it's healthcare and we are the ones that are empowering women. And it's like, but but you're making it sound like because a woman can't do it or doesn't have resources. Oh, see, this is the easy way. And what we want to share is that, hold on a second, you are supported. There are resources. We can connect you. You can be loved. It doesn't matter what you come from. We are here to support you. There are community organizations that we partner with. There's our own staff that helps really come alongside and love. We offer practical help, with formula and diapers and clothing. And
just needs that
just
you have
needs.
when
And
a
I
baby
think-
shows up.
Yeah, and the statistics will show that when a woman realizes that she's not alone and she can find that support, they're more likely to make the life-affirming choice because they realize, well, I would really like to take that. I really want to be empowered to do that. And I find that just so beautiful that I'm really humbled that I get to come here and be a part of that. And it's exciting.
It's great. Well, and also when they can see that ultrasound,
Yes.
that's a pretty big component in making that decision too.
Yeah, or just a heartbeat, that you can hear the heartbeat.
Just to hear the heartbeat.
Yes, 7 or 8 weeks, like right at the beginning, that you could even just hear a heartbeat. And that's such a precious thing because, again, I think of my mom and I've asked her, I'm like, you went there and you were, obviously you could feel me and you knew there was something, right? You even, no matter what you call she didn't know, but they never gave her a heartbeat. They never, and I don't even know if ultrasound was around in 1973, but the fact that once she heard the heartbeat, it became so real. So connected instantly. And
You hear that shh.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so I think of my mom, when I think of these clients that may come through our door and just that concern. And it's beautiful we can offer them those resources.
Did you have to kind of go through some forgiveness
With
for
my
her?
parents?
Yeah.
It's funny. I feel like
Obviously she didn't really want this.
she didn't really want it. And my parents, they ended up, my parents divorced when I was 20 and they're both still in my life. My mom actually lives here in Waco. And then my dad, we have a really great relationship. I don't know. I think as a child, there was so much other trauma going on in my life. Like I was just in constant forgiveness mode because it's one of those things that if I learned very early, for example, with my parents, like my dad was a fabulous dad. But he was a terrible man, he was a terrible husband. He was a cheater. There was a lot of abuse, but he was a good dad to me. He'd show up at school. He'd pick me up. He'd bring me my favorite soda. We'd go to lunch. And so I just learned early people were broken. And I wouldn't have articulated that as a child, but I learned just we're broken and it's a constant daily forgiveness to look at people and to try and find the good. So I feel like the gift of my broken life is being able to walk through life that way. Is there's just constant forgiveness, and that's what the Lord would call us to as well.
Well, you're obviously a very strong believer.
Yes.
Tell me about your faith walk.
My faith walk. So growing up the way that I did, raised Catholic, but it was funny because sometimes we were Catholic, sometimes we were Seventh-day Adventist, sometimes it just depend on who would show up at the door, right, to take us to church. But my parents, I knew of Jesus, but I didn't want Jesus. They're Jesus. I was like, whatever this looks like that's not what I need in my life. And I spent a lot of my life I wouldn't say rebellious. And it's funny because I do feel the Lord had his hand on my life because he preserved me from a lot of negative things I probably would have gone into. There was something holding back a lot of dark in my life. But I came to know him at 27 for myself, like in a real personal way. I had just had my first daughter. She was maybe about a year old. And I had just graduated from law school. We had this baby. My husband and I both highly educated, and we had moved to San Diego. And we're like, we're going to move down there and get jobs. And
lovely part of the country.
3 months go by, no jobs are happening. And it's like, because it's all about us, right? It's like, look how amazing I am. We're going to find jobs. The Lord used that to really, my dad at that point had also been walking about 8 years with the Lord, truly.
Oh, really?
So I watched a transformation through his life.
Yeah, because you knew the before.
I knew the before.
Yeah.
And so when he started to speak into my life and say, I'm just praying for you. You got to find a church. You really got to dig in. I remember it was the first time my husband and I had ever gotten on our knees together. And I'm like, Lord, I don't even know. Sorry. I don't even know who you are really, but I know that you're real. I just need to see you for real. Yeah. And I was reading the Bible, and my dad was sharing verses, and I don't even know how I came on it, but I always tell people, Isaiah 58 saved me. And people are like, Isaiah 58? What an obscure...
I'm thinking, what is Isaiah 58?
Isaiah 58 is all about the fast that I have called you to. Mm-hmm. And in that portion of scripture, it just starts talking about how, the Lord, when we can do all these things, we can say big things and we can pretend we see him and we can rent our clothes and we can do all the things to make a show. But he's like, that's not what I've called you to. I've called you to compassion, and I've called you to kindness, and I've called you to help those that are in need and the broken. And he says, then your light will shine forth. Then you will be the rebuilder of the broken roads. Yeah. And when I saw rebuilder of broken roads, like I had come from such brokenness, I'm like, Lord, I want that. I want to be a rebuilder of broken roads. I know it's ultimately Jesus that rebuilds, but you know, it spoke into just me as a human being. And that's where my walk started. I'm like, I want to know who this God is, the one that tells me that all things are possible. And now it goes to CareNet, right? Like the heart that saved me, that is what we're trying to say to these young women and men that come through the door. Like, you have power to make a choice. Like, because when you do, you too can be a rebuilder of broken roads. Like, that's the God that we serve. So 27, I've been walking since I was 27, and it's been a phenomenal walk. Like, I see the Lord all over, like just his hand all over my life and in my children and in my marriage, and you know, and he carries us through. Life is not easy. Just because you're a believer, life is not easy. And I feel like more and more it's like where evil abounds, grace abounds all the more. And that's the testimony of my life.
Amen. Preach on.
Hey,
Preach
girl.
on. Yeah, I mean, you had a big transition, though, moving from Portland to Central Texas.
Oh, my gosh.
Bit of a culture shock.
Yes.
But tell me about your family. I understand your daughters are at Baylor, is that right?
I have 2 girls at Baylor. So I have a senior, and she's in the marketing department. And she met her man also in the marketing department her freshman year. So they're getting married in August. And then I have a sophomore, McKenna, and she is she's journalism with an advertising focus.
Good.
Yep. And then we also have a son who's 15, and he plays baseball with Midway. So we were like, boy, if you want to play baseball, we better know if you can play in Texas. And so we came down, and so he plays. So yes, so we have 3 kids, and they're so close. Like the sisters will pop in the car and be like, Seb, we're coming over. We're going to go get a drink. And so they'll come pick him up, and they'll come over and do homework or ask for a salad. And so when we moved here, it wasn't just to be near the girls. It really, truly, we needed to get out of Oregon. Yeah. Like whatever people hear in the media, like times 10, like it was really sad and hard to be there.
You know, it's hard for me to see that because it is such a beautiful part of the country.
And we had been there 20 years. Like we moved there, and it was like this beautiful secret pocket of the Northwest. Yeah. And we just watched the slow demise. And as we've been here, we're really engaged with the chamber. For example, my husband loves to go to the chamber meetings, and he's like, I feel like I'm here to be a voice, like for some of the things that are being proposed, or because we watched it. We watched, you know, just things start to change the communities and just policies.
And it can happen anywhere.
It can happen anywhere. And it's a slow drip.
Right.
It's a very slow drip that gets you to a point of no return. And so when it was time to leave, but again, I feel like I look at that and I'm like, Lord, thank you. Like the way you orchestrated life to get us to a point to say, this is the moment, it's time to leave, you know, with my son at his age and my girls where they are. And it's all for the good. Everything always works for the good.
Yeah,
and it was just
your
our
steps
time.
are ordered.
Yes, and it was just time to go.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, I want to hear about NBC's Food Fighters.
You got it.
That is just going to be so much fun. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Brooks Running has a new shoe for you runners out there. Did you hear that? Better turn up your volume. In fact, turn it up to the max. Introducing the all-new Ghost Max. It's got all kinds of things to make your knees and ankles feel protected, like Max Cushion, Max Soft Landings with DNA Loft V2 foam, and Max Smooth Rides with their Glide Roll Rocker. Feel better on your run with Ghost Max. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
Loud.
I'm back,
Okay.
baby. Woo!
Hi, I'm Trey Cooper.
I'm Solomon Cooper.
and we're the hosts of The Kid Stays in the Podcast.
It's a cross-generational discussion about movies. Two perspectives. I'm the young one, he's the old one, and we have fun arguments.
I don't think we need to say it that way.
You're old.
Anyway, whenever you tune in to listen to The Kid Stays in the Podcast, you can expect to hear a very, very intelligent discussion of a film from me and a really imbecilic perspective from Solomon, who hates anything that wasn't made after 2007.
You're very rude to me.
We tried to watch a movie from 1985 once, and he really hated it. Tune into our show. Hear me roast Solomon week after week.
Find us anywhere you get your podcast or on roguemedianetwork.com.
Hi, this is Sarah.
And I'm Carter.
And this is Some of Our Thoughts.
We're two Southern sommeliers, and we want to share everything we love and know about wine. We started hanging out during quarantine and cooking and drinking and listening to music, and we just thought this would be a great way to bring everything we know to you guys.
We will make wine knowledge and food pairings easy and approachable. So put on your favorite vinyl, grab your favorite glass of wine, tune into our show, and let's have some fun.
Wine and vinyl. So check us out on roguemedianetwork.com or wherever you get your favorite podcast. We'll be talking about a lot.
Hey y'all, I'm April.
Hi, I'm Caroline.
And we have a new podcast for you. What's it called, Caroline?
Bloody Happy Hour.
It's going to be your new favorite guilty pleasure. We're going to talk about some bloody stuff. Serial killers, true crime, rapists. Why not join us? We'll have a good time.
You literally never know. I don't know what I'm going to say. Bloody Happy Hour. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And I'm back with Elisha Joyce, who is the incoming, brand new on the job, really, executive director of CareNet in Waco. Told her very gripping story about how her life is a gift. But you grew up in Guam. Let's talk about your, further back childhood and how you ended up on NBC's Food Fighters in 2014. You won it. You beat four
out of five.
Four out of five chefs.
Yes. Okay, so Guam first. So a lot of people will go, "Oh, was your dad in the military?" And I say, "Yes, he was. He was Army, but he left Guam to join the military. He was 17, grew up very poor, didn't speak much English, and the military was his way out. So he did like 6 tours in Nam, and then after he finished in the military, he had landed in Oakland, California. And he had had some injuries in the military and he got into bodybuilding. And so that's where his bodybuilding career began. So I was born in California, San Leandro, and we spent the first 6 years in the Bay Area where he owned his gym. And then because of just things he was involved in and really it was just not good. It was not a good environment. And he knew that if he was going to save anything in his life, that it had to be like we had to uproot and run. So we went back to Guam where he was from. And I lived in literally a little tin shack. It was probably about, 600 square feet, 2 bedrooms. We had no bathroom sink. We didn't have enough room for a kitchen table. My parents' bed was in the front room. We had no running hot water. And it was literally in the boonies. And so I grew up, and we had that house probably till I was 13.
Really?
Yep.
Your formative years.
Yeah, very formative years. So I grew up like chasing baby chickens and waking up to the roosters crowing. And because my mom did not cook, my grandma lived right next door. That was also the beauty, I think, of growing up in the islands, is my grandma really was like my rock, my dad's mom, and she lived right next door. And in Guam, you don't really cook in the house. Maybe now you do because it's modern, but back in the day, everybody had outdoor kitchens. And so we'd go from our house, our little tin shack, to her little tin shack off the back of her kitchen. And we used to eat on an old military desk, and she had a rock under one leg, and that's where she'd feed us. And you could only eat one at a time. So it'd be grandma and a person that she was feeding and she would cook on her open fire stove. And so I am so grateful to be able to tell that story, because I look at my kids, I'm like, gosh, I wish you could have grown up the way that I did.
You have no idea.
Yeah, in a tin shack with chickens. Like, my first pet was a rooster that slept under the porch with our dogs. Like, like real, true island life.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I spent all my formative years in Guam, left at 18. Ended up going to Gonzaga University, which is where I met my husband. We were studying abroad in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
He had come from Northern Arizona, and I was already at Gonzaga. And so we met studying abroad. And NBC Food Fighters, at that time in our life, so that would have been 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated from law school, ended up having babies. And so even with that law degree, I always dreamed of being a litigator or an appellate attorney. That's really what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But since I was home and we were having kids, that was always a commitment. And so I always just tried to hustle from home. I flipped houses. I subdivided land. I was a realtor for a while. And then because I was making baby food at home, I taught myself to cook as a married woman, since I never had that growing up. And I started making...
Yeah, your grandmother was doing the cooking.
Did all the
never,
cooking.
Yeah.
I never knew anything about the kitchen.
Really?
So really it was like learning one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was making baby food, so I had taken a food product to market. And it was during that period of life, a girlfriend and I wanted to be on The Amazing Race. So I was at home one day and I'm like, Amazing Race, and they weren't casting. And somehow I popped around and NBC was like, are you a home cook that thinks you can beat professional chefs? I'm like, yes. I was so naive. Like, why in the million years?
Really?
Yes. I was like, I wasn't.
You just taught yourself how to cook.
Taught myself how to cook. I'm like, yes, ask me. And I sent in a picture and a little bio. And at that time, because I had the food product, I was doing live TV in Portland.
Yeah, it was like bite size.
They was called Smarty Bars. They
little
were
protein
bites. It was
That's
whole
pretty cool.
food energy snack. And
very
I was
clever.
Thank you. And I was doing live TV spots, teaching people how to cook on TV. So I had all this great stuff I could tell NBC. I'm like, I do live television. I'm the quinoa queen. I have this food product. Here are some snapshots. And within like 30 minutes, I got a call from LA. I thought, what is this? And they were like, we want to talk to you. And it was about a 6-month process of casting.
Mm-hmm.
But what you see when you watch Food Fighters, it is real. Like that competition was real. They would set the clock and I'd have to cook a dish, and it's all in real time. And so I look back on that now. I'm like, how did I do that with the adrenaline?
I was a nervous wreck just watching the clip.
My
In fact, the first one I saw was really your last competition, I think, was with the
Lorena Garcia.
And she was, and you were doing something with a pressure cooker. He goes, you use a pressure cooker.
Oh.
you go, girl, or something like that.
She was
darling.
toughy, but she was tough. And it's
oh
funny
man, she had a good looking dish. She ended up with.
She did. And what I learned after the fact is they really were giving. So there was this dinner party. No one knew who the dinner party was or where the food was going to,
right? Or who the people
were. But they were giving them very specific instructions. So it had to be quinoa. The dish I beat her with was quinoa and salmon, and so mine was literally quinoa and salmon, where she had mixed her salmon in,
and so, it got a little brown.
Yes, but it actually was delicious.
I'm sure
it was like blackened salmon.
It was, yeah,
it was.
That's a thing.
Yes, it was delicious.
Yeah, but they were like, oh, you've gotten it too dark.
That's all for television. There's some of that in the edits.
Okay.
Adam Richmond did a great job.
Yeah, he did.
They do. They draw on the drama.
Oh yeah.
But I remember plating, and I almost missed a plate. I mean, there's real things that go on, and
you were slinging by the way.
I was, and the kids were tiny, and it's so neat that I got to do that because I don't know how.
What an
life,
experience!
I know, and I don't know how I would do it again. So it's fun that I have those little things that touched my life, and we're just. I call those little treats from the Lord. Like he just gives us little things he knows that we'll enjoy, like a good daddy.
Well, you were so brave to do that. I mean, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, I cannot imagine the stress that was. But you did great. You won a nice purse for sure.
Yes, and the way it worked is each dish had an amount tied to it.
First was 5,000.
I think it was 5, 10, 15, then it was 30, and then you could double whatever it was.
Right.
And I ended up losing the 4th round to, I forget what his name, Marcel. He had been on MasterChef. He's still a big chef around town, and he was a sweetie.
But these professional chefs you were competing with, they're very gracious. They were. I mean, everybody. It just looked like a fun experience.
It was a very fun experience.
Oh my gosh!
I know.
Give me a tranquilizer after. So anyway, that to me is just a wonderful aspect of your life. And then you've been a content producer, kind of a marketing guru in a way yourself.
Yes. And I think what I want to touch on too is I think some people will look at me and say, well, what does all that have to do with being at CareNet?
Yeah.
How does that even relate? And I would say that the path that the Lord really took me down professionally, like to credential me, like to give me my law degree. And then from there to be home with my kids and to be in women's ministry, because I was in women's ministry for years, really always seeking to use my education. And so I was a writer for years and I taught Bible studies. And then I moved into food and I got into media. And then by the time I had launched Relish Division, which is what I owned the last 6 years before we moved here, 5 or 6 years, my business partner, Bradley, and we had met on a food shoot. I was
really?
I was a spokesperson for Frigidaire for 2 campaigns. And so he and I met and I said, listen, I've got this background in law and education and storytelling. And he was he was a filmmaker by trade. He had been at HBO for years. And so we paired up our expertise. And so we launched Relish Division. So for the last 5 years, I was business manager, CEO, I was executive producer, and we got to do some pretty tremendous things. KitchenAid was our primary client for the last 4 years. So anything released up until about, let's see, I think 2022 was our last campaign. But if they had special campaigns, we'd work with the global marketing department, and then we would basically create the visual experience of that launch. So photography, video, and then they'd release it out on social media, use it on the website. So it was really, really fun. But then again, I always tell people starting all the way back in law school, like learning how to be a good storyteller. That's really what law school taught me, is how do you tell a good story with the facts in front of you? How do you really, build in some emotion where you're not really supposed to be too emotional, right? Because you want to help people, like you want to win people over to your side. And then the practical experiences of contracts and just understanding, like, this is a new product. How are you supposed to talk about this? But then you add in my personal life. And then that's where the blending, I think, for this position at CareNet really comes in. Because in a post-Roe world, too, it's new story. It's a new message we have to tell to be very clear of where we're going. And I feel like that's why when the board looked at me and we talked about that past experience, it's like, oh, okay, this is how this could really help.
You're just perfect for the job. And I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you better. But I like to end these little visits with a little questionnaire similar to the one the late, great James Lipton would do on Inside the Actors Studio. So here we go. What is your favorite word?
Oh, my gosh. My favorite word. My favorite word. Jesus. That's always the answer. That's my favorite word. And I don't mean that kitschy. I mean that truly. Like, it's always the answer.
Yeah. What's your least favorite word?
Fear.
Yeah. Yeah. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Challenge. Like really trying to see okay, Lord, I'm looking with your eyes. This looks impossible, but nothing's impossible. So what am I supposed to see? So challenge does.
Yeah. What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
A line in the sand. Like if you say this is it, like it's like, well, how can I think if that's the line in the sand? If it's just the box, like that feels stifling to me. So that would be the turnoff.
Interesting.
Of my mind.
What sound do you love the most?
Laughter.
Yeah, good. What about your least favorite sound?
Oh my gosh, my daughter is going to make me laugh. It's become my least favorite sound when you're eating with a fork and it scratches the bottom of the bowl. Oh, my oldest daughter, we laugh so hard because she's always like, get rid of these bowls. But now it's like, that's my least favorite sound.
Right. You've done a lot of interesting things. What other profession would you like to have tried?
It's funny. If this CareNet thing, if I would not have landed here, I think I was leaning towards possibly opening an artisan bakery. I love bread. Yes. Yeah. Waco might have had its first artisan bakery if I wouldn't have taken this job because I bake bread at home and I haven't been able to find good bread. And I love the table. That's why I think the culinary career I've had has been so exciting because Jesus brought people around the table and I love food, and food just makes people so happy. So that's probably the career I would have gone into, is something like that.
Interesting. What profession do you know you would not want to do though? No, thank you.
Oh my gosh. It's funny because I would probably say I don't want to be a politician.
Yeah.
But now I'm wondering if a little bit of this role
I was
is
gonna
a little
say.
political. And so,
Oh, no question. It will be.
yes,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, I've kind of tried my hand at everything and I just appreciate so much of every job that has to get done. I don't know if I've ever really thought like I would never do that in a million years.
Good. Well, finally, what do you want to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, my good and faithful servant.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Elisha, it has just been a delight to
Thank
get to
you.
know you. Thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you.
God's blessings on you as you enter this new phase.
Thank you.
This
And
new
as I get
chapter
to
of
know
your life
people,
for both you and CareNet,
Thank you
and
very
and
much.
of course CareNet is just near and dear to my heart, the work they do, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Central Texas Life. Bye-bye.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.